Welcome, everyone. Today, I wanted to introduce our Financial Fitness Checkup program. This program is designed to help you identify areas of your financial life that you should look at or maybe address during the year. And like any good fitness program, it starts off with a look at where you are and then areas that you may be able to make improvements with. You can get a copy of the checklist that we're going to look at by going to bautisfinancial.com/checkup. So we'll discuss different aspects of your financial life, such as your work, health, family, and goals for the year. And then as we go through the presentation, if you have a checklist in front of you, or if you want to download it, feel free. It's really simple. We'll go into more detail, but it's strictly just answering yes or no on a lot of these questions. So let's get started. My name is Mark Bautis. I'm the founder and owner of Bautis Financial. We host these educational webinars every other week. If you go onto our Learning Center, where you can see the link bautisfinancial.com/learning center, you can see a replays of all the webinars we've hosted last year, in addition to some that we've hosted this year, as well as upcoming ones that we have. So our next one that we have is going to be on how to get ready for tax season. And then the last one we did was a look at 2021, what happened with the economy and the markets, and then also a look at 2022. And even though we're only a little over 1 month in, we're seeing a lot of things going on in the economy and markets. I have my colleague Kira Mackesy on the webinar. She'll be monitoring the chat and Q&A sections or boxes. If you have any questions, please feel free to enter them in there, and we'll address them. Here's our standard disclaimer. This is an educational webinar, and before you make any financial decisions, consult with a financial professional. Okay, so we're a little more than a month into 2022, and your financial picture now may look different than it did a year ago. It may even look different than it did just a couple of months ago. Or if you haven't looked at your finances in a while, it may look radically different than it did before the pandemic. So as we go through this checklist or this checkup today, try and look at it from the lens of what's changed, whether it's in the past 12 months or even soon, 6 months, 3 months, or even longer than that. It could have been a change in employment, a change in health, a change in your family structure. So really, it's really looking at these, with should I be doing something to improve my situation? And then lastly, you also want to think about what do you want to achieve going forward. So it's not just a look about what changed in the past, and that we'll talk a little bit about goals, whether it's goals this year or goals, for a longer term horizon. These are the different areas that we'll be covering. Some people they may have had changes in 1 or 2 of these areas. For other people, they may have gone through changes in almost all these areas. And then for some, you might go through the checklist or go through this webinar and determine, okay, nothing's changed. I feel like I'm in a good financial decision, and there's no financial situation, and there's no decisions that I specifically have to make now. Okay, so let's get started. Checklist is pretty straightforward. Here's what it looks like, kind of spread out, but it's 4 pages. You just have to go through and you check yes or no for each of the questions that are on there into those different sections that we looked at. And as you're going through it, you're not really making any decisions or solving any of these financial problems or situations that come up. It's really to just do a high-level check and see what areas you need to address. Then you decide if you want to tackle them. The ones that you answer yes for, you decide, do you want to tackle them yourself? Do you want to enlist the help of an advisor or some combination of that? But really the first step is just kind of identifying, these are the areas I need to look at. If you go into the year, and a lot of people, engage us to put some structure or help them with some decisions, if you kind of look at it from all right, I need to make all these decisions, I want to get better, it can be overwhelming, and what happens is a lot of people just don't do anything. So in here, we're trying to take a top-down approach, look at it at a high level, and then let's tackle some of these areas. Maybe it's 1 area per month that needs to get addressed, and that way it's more manageable over the year. Or maybe it is, there's 5 things that need to be addressed, and boom, you can knock them out and have everything done in a month. But really, the first step is identifying the areas that need to be addressed. Okay, so the first area we'll look at is family. You really want to look at, do you expect, or have you gone through any relationship changes, whether it's marriage, divorce? Are you expecting a new addition to the family? Do you have a child going to college? The idea of looking at these, it's, some of these may not be even something that happens this year. Like if we take the example of, do you have a child going to college? Maybe it's not this year, but maybe they're a freshman or sophomore and they're going to be going to school in a couple of years. Well, it probably, like with any planning opportunity or planning area, the earlier that you look at it, the more chance of success that you'll have of making a better decision or being in a better position for it. And planning for college is just one of these examples. Everyone thinks of college planning and they think, oh, I have a baby or I have a young kid, I want to save. But there's a lot of planning that goes around your financial aid package. And a lot of people don't think they'll get a financial aid package because of the income. And sometimes that's true and sometimes that's not true. But late stage college planning, and I'm really focusing on that one here, it's just an example of one of these where you can look at it at a high level and say, yes, I do have a child who's going to school. And then its next step is dive into the details and figure out if there's something that you should be doing that you're not doing. Okay, next one is your goals. And thinking about financial goals can be really challenging. I come across some people that I meet with where they're laser focused. They come into my office and they'll rattle off these 10 different goals that they have. And then on the flip side, I have some people that they'll come in and they'll just say, well, I don't really have any goals. I want to retire someday and not run out of money. And there's no right or wrong. But it is a good exercise to go through and just think about, are there things that you want to accomplish? And goals can be anything. There's some of them that are listed here with major vacations or significant purchases, but it could be retiring early. I'm seeing a lot of where one spouse wants to retire, and they want to just basically analyze what is going to be the impact if that happens. I have a lot of people that come in and say they want to generate a certain number of a certain amount of passive income per year. You hear about this live off your assets or let your assets generate income that you can live off, and that way you're not dependent on your job. And I'm seeing a lot more focus on that. It could be starting a business, or it could be someone gets they want to start being more charitable with donations and with giving. So we'll talk a little bit about some of these in some of the upcoming slides. But in here, I think a lot of people went from working their regular 9-to-5 job, and during the pandemic they came and said, you know what, I have this itch to start a business. Or maybe like I mentioned earlier, one spouse retiring. But if a business is something that you're considering, there's a lot of planning obviously that goes into that, and you want to do planning to be successful in starting it. But also, even if you have an existing business, are you taking advantage of everything that the business offers? Could you offer additional benefits, or are you offering the right benefits to help with retaining talent? It could be a retirement plan, a health plan that you might need. I'm seeing also a lot of people contemplating selling their business. So there's a lot that goes into that. The first step is just knowing what the value of your business is. And so many people don't really understand that. But, I guess that's one thing to look at. One section that we have is on business. And if that is something you're considering, the more planning you do is obviously the better. Now let's talk a little bit about work. Have you changed jobs recently? Do you anticipate changing jobs? This might be an area that changed for a lot of people in 2021. And changing jobs also means retiring. So some people may have planned to retire. Some people may have been forced into retirement over the past couple of years. But you really want to look at, what is the impact of that? And there's different areas, from cash flow to retirement savings to income. Even if you're not retiring, but you change jobs and your compensation changed. We're seeing a lot of people come in that are receiving employee stock benefits as part of their compensation package, and they're not sure what to do with it. And another thing we're seeing a lot of people, they're getting offered the company's offering to buy out their pension, and they want to know, how do I evaluate that? How do I look and see, is that a smart decision to make or not? And that's where we come in, and some of these are very quantitative, where we look at that example of the decision. Either they keep the pension and it looks like this, or they take the buyout and it looks like this. And we try and make the comparison as apples to apples as possible, so it helps the person make that decision of which route they take. But a lot of people make these decisions and kind of just at the whim and just hope for the best. So it really is all going back to, the more planning that you do, the better the probability the outcomes are. Okay, next is a big one, and a lot of people don't consider this in their financial plan or as a financial topic, but it's your health, and your health can impact a lot of different things. Whether that's you have a serious illness, or you want to just look at your healthcare coverage, or you're getting your employer is giving you an option for a different type of plan, and you want to figure out, well, how do I analyze that? How do I determine which plan to take? We're seeing a lot of employers offering the high deductible plans with the HSAs attached to it. So you want to look at, well, you may have had your traditional plan. Now you're getting offered this other plan and you don't know which one to take. A lot of questions we get are around Medicare. How to enroll in it, when to enroll in it, what supplemental coverage, or how to analyze all the different supplemental coverages that are out there. So, depending upon where you are, whether you're working, have a family, young kids, or you're transitioning into Medicare, or you're on Medicare. That's the other thing too, is a lot of people, they'll go on Medicare at 65, they'll get their supplemental plan, and then they just keep renewing it every year and don't even look. Things change with the plan, things change with your medical needs. So reviewing it each year is definitely something that could be beneficial. Then there's your money. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot going on this year with the markets. Just in January alone, we've seen inflation, potential interest rates rising. We saw another spike of COVID in December, January. We see supply chain issues. Corporate earnings are coming out, and for the first time in a while, they're kind of all over the place. So maybe you have concerns about, what risk you have in your investment portfolio, or what would happen if certain events happen. And, what we like to do is stress test it and show, well, if interest rates rise this much, here's what you can expect. Or if the S&P 500 goes down or is volatile, here's what you can expect in your portfolio. The other thing too, on help drafting a spending or savings plan, we're very big believers in being intentional in your cash flow or in your spending, right? You have money coming in. Is it going to the right place? Sometimes people have money coming in, they'll spend until it's gone for the month. Some people have money coming in, they just sit it in a cash banking account, not earning anything. And really the answers to both of these, to those two examples, maybe that's fine, but you really want to look and see, how does your spending correlate to what's important to you, or what your goals are. And it could be things like, even though there has been a big refinancing boom, some people, haven't taken advantage of the low interest rates. And even though they've had an uptick in interest rates recently, they're still historically low. So even that being said, a refinance may make sense. Are you looking to reduce your taxes? I've never come across someone that said, no, I'm not looking to reduce my taxes. So the question is, are you, and this leads to our webinar that we have upcoming, is how can you be more efficient with preparing, but also analyzing your taxes to see, where you can make improvements on it. Some people treat that debt differently. Some people, it keeps them up at night if they have any debt, and they just want to know, how can I eliminate all the debt I have? And then some people use it as a tool to advance or to improve their financial situation. And then there are some people who recklessly use debt and want to better themselves, but they don't know where to start and how to, how they have all these moving parts with, they want to save for their kids' college, or they want to save for retirement, but they may have student loans or credit card debt or some other kinds of debt, and they want to know, how does it all fit together. And then the last one turns into the emotions or the psychology about money. But I see a lot of people where the spouses are on really complete opposite sides of how to, spend, or how to save, or how to take risk in their investments or their assets. And, there is something that to be said for really coming up with a joint plan and figuring out how to work through it. And there are ways to do it. It doesn't just have to be, one spouse is this way, the other spouse is this way, and then let's just not do anything. There are ways to really, improve your situation while working and coordinating it with your spouse. The COVID-19 pandemic, it's highlighted the importance of estate planning. So I'll just talk about a couple of these things. The first one is, will your net worth total more than 12 million in 2022? So there was a tax proposal created last year, which ultimately got tabled, and apparently is going to be revisited this year. But one of the things that was in that was reducing the estate tax exemption, which is currently 12 million. Potentially in that proposal is that it would be halved to 6 million. So it's causing some people to revisit their estate plan. And if you're on the border of either of those, there may be some things that you're able to do now to really, benefit your estate plan or benefit what happens to the assets when you do pass. Another thing is, will you make any substantial charitable gifts or donations this year? So there's a tax strategy around this. It involves itemizing deductions, bunching deductions, and then whether you claim the standard deduction or the itemized deduction, and bunching your charitable donations every other year. But again, this really just shows that, you want to look at each of these individually and kind of say, oh yeah, this may be something that's interesting or something that does pertain to me. And you check it off, and then you either analyze it, look at it yourself, or enlist the help of someone, of an advisor who may be able to provide some guidance on what your options are and what the pros and cons of each option is. Next up is retirement. And I know this is definitely a big topic for anyone that's recently retired or someone that's even looking to retire in the next couple of years. It's big from a financial perspective and also big from an emotional perspective, because you're really going to, from something that you've done every day for 8, 9, 10 hours a day to, a radical change in your lifestyle, plus, cutting out that income. You really have to figure out, how do I rebuild my paycheck? So a couple of things you want to look at. Do we have any leftover retirement accounts at former employers? I mentioned earlier, structure and organization's a big reason that we saw people come to us last year and say they want help with some, coordination, some structure, some organization around what they're doing. It's, hard to come up with a investment strategy if you have 6 different 401ks or IRAs and they're all kind of doing their own thing. And, it's tough to kind of look at it, or bundle it up and look and say, well, at a high level, here's what I'm doing with my investments. Another thing is, maybe someone needs to borrow or withdraw funds from their retirement accounts. There's different options that they have depending upon what retirement account that someone has. We're seeing a lot of people approach the age that they have to start pulling money out, their required minimum distribution. And the rules around these are a little bit confusing, especially in the first year. So, a lot of people need help with just understanding how RMDs work, how are they calculated, what can they do with them? And, the other flair to it is if it's an inherited IRA as well, how do they manage that? Now, I talked a little bit about goals, and it really coordinates with how do you envision your future? What do you want to achieve? How does this financial fitness, maybe in the short term, kind of lead towards, improving finances over a longer period of time? So, that first is, do you need some help getting organized? Do you have an adequate emergency fund? What happens, always look at and stress test and look at the worst case scenario. What happens if you lose your job? What happens if there's a health event? What happens if, you need to do a major repair on your house? Could you get by? How long could you get by? And we look at things like different ratios, like your savings ratio or, your liquidity ratio. And what would happen? Could you withstand 3 months without any income from your job, 6 months, a year? Or what would be the plan for it? Where's best to, for the first couple of months, cover it from this way here, or here's access to another, period of another tranche of money. There's questions that come up about Social Security and how best to coordinate that with someone who's retired or thinking about retiring and trying to build their paycheck. The thing that's on here about stressed about your finances, I see this all the time where people worry about them, and sometimes for good reason, and sometimes it's just stressful. Finances are just very stressful, and having some structure and organization around them can really be a big benefit. Or then on the opposite side, there's your bucket list. What are the things that you really want to do, and how do you put a plan together so that you can actually do them? I think a lot of people do have bucket lists, or they do say, I want to do this, I want to do that, but then there's the execution of it is really important. And the planning of it too, right? They might say you want to do something and you don't know how much it's going to cost, or doing that, how much would it impact your future? I have some grandparents that say they want to pay for their grandkids' college, but then the next question they have is, can I actually do that? Will that put me in a financial burden to doing that? So you really want to just, after you check it off and say, this is something I want to analyze, is actually do the analysis and figure out, does it, is it going to impact you, or does it make sense, or can you even do it? So, again, bucket lists are great, but having the bucket list is one thing. You actually have to come up with the plan of how do you do the things that are on that bucket list. So now that we've gone through the entire checklist, let's take a quick second to answer these questions. What's changed in 2021? And that could be, just writing down a couple of different sentences that are different. And the change means not just what's actually changed, but from 2021, what were you thinking in 2021? And now what do you want to see change going forward? So that lends into that second one of what do you want to discuss as, we're getting into 2022. And you see how fast time flies. We're already a month and a half into 2022. Whereas, a lot of people start off in January and they say, yeah, I really want to do this. I want to get some structure. I want to do this. And then time goes by. If you don't take action, you don't get started, time goes by very quickly. And, pretty soon we'll be in 2023 and saying, wow, 2022 went really fast. I wanted to do this, but I just didn't have the time to do it. And really, it's all about getting started. And this is a way to quickly get started on it by just reviewing that checklist and kind of maybe putting a focus on one item a week or one item every other week on it. So next steps, I offer a free consultation if you want to review your checklist, what you went through and what items on it are important to you. You can schedule a free call at bautisfinancial.com/call. You can also get to it from our website, bautisfinancial.com. And it's really kind of that. So that first step is you going through that checklist and figuring out what are things that you want to look at, or even if you want someone to just talk you through the checklist and whether something really it should be looked at or not. I'm happy to do that. So, I think these items, which are obviously high level items, we talked a little about a couple of them and how do you go into the next level after you determine that's something that you want to do. But it's really just making better decisions, being more efficient with your finances. Obviously, if you know someone who could benefit from participating in this or going through the checklist themselves, please forward it to them. Or if you let me know, I'd be happy to forward a copy to them as well. So Kira, I'll stop there and just see if we have any questions.
Thanks, Mark. There's no questions in the chat today.
Okay, perfect. So here's my, in addition to that link to be able to set up a call, here's my contact info here. You're happy to call, email, or like I said, if you go to our website, you can schedule a call there. Also, remember that we do keep the recordings of these on our website in the Learning Center. So we have some good ones from last year that talk specifically about financial topics that we see a lot of people have questions with, but also you can look and see what we have upcoming for the rest of the year. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully you found this motivational to, and like I mentioned, the most important step is getting started and taking that first step. Do a couple things here, a couple things there. It becomes more manageable than being overwhelming at first. And really, you take the step now, it could really improve things going forward in the future. So I'm looking forward to connecting with everyone soon. And like I said, be happy to discuss the checklist with you going forward.